Good morning. I'm sitting sideways because my dog is on my leg, and I can't turn. I can't turn to face you. I want to I want to have a conversation with you this morning. It's so interesting to have started this. I'm working on my computer, so I want to make sure this is showing on Facebook. Um, it is, Irana. It's so interesting to me these last years, 45. So I want to start this conversation by just explaining to you that I've been watching some things for a long time, mostly what I would call a meta point, the unity point of the spirit and the flesh, the unity point of the secular and the sacred, the unity point of the eternal and the temporal. But my own body, my own personal exploration has been a very deep knowledge that I've had probably since I was born, but not as an active consciousness till I was older and knew more, of how hard it was to be in a body in this incarnation, not just for me, but for everyone. It isn't like our light radiates out from our body and we shine um, as a population. So my work has been dedicated to bring everything back into unity, the meta point of spirit and flesh, temporal and eternal, secular and sacred, matter and energy. So I populated my world with people who are paying attention to that. The reason I'm starting the conversation this way is because I'm not just someone who had an experience that doesn't have, in other words, I come with a wealth of paying attention behind it. I really have been up all night. I think I just got an hour's sleep. I feel like the girl in Contact at the end where everybody disproves that she went somewhere and saw something, but nothing can shake her awareness that she did do that. I kind of don't know where to start. So I think, as usual, I'll start by telling you a story. For me, a huge level of synchronicity occurred in the last maybe 7 days. That quite possibly saved my life. We'll never know, except maybe I do. When the creation exercises were sort of channeled to me and the awareness of them was given to me a long time ago, it was so that human beings could register their own awareness separate from what the world was telling them to think, that they could track their own consciousness, they could pay attention and trust what they were paying attention to and respond to it. But you have to know, I'm one of the people that actually does the creation exercises. And I don't remember when now, maybe last year in the Spirals of Being, we, a bunch of us, did what we call run the templates together. Literally, because it takes field phenomenon. It takes the mana, the chi, the life force energy of a field, of a living field, for awareness and but more than awareness, a lot of people go for awareness, but your respondability, your ability to respond in the face of doubt, your ability to respond in the face of nobody's going to believe you, the ability to respond in the face of your own listening, your own awareness, most of all, your own direct link with creation. So we'll never know if I had or have, but mostly had, the power of the COVID virus. We'll never know. You'll never know. I know. Because everything tracked right. Everything operated consistent with, I guess you could say, a relationship with activity of creation that I have been studying and listening. Because when you operate in a field of unity, when you operate in a spectrum of everything operates on behalf of life, everything is part of everything else and everything has a place, you have a different internal spectrum pay attentioner, I guess you'd say. So the easiest way to say it is this virus that is very unusual. Now today I can tell you more unusual than I would have ever imagined, has come to live with us. Most of you will never be touched by it. But you know what? I'm having the conversation anyway. Because the sacred space for rest and courage was established to build a field within which new realities can rise. And for me, this is a safe and sacred place for courage and rest. Today, mine. So a sequence of events happen that is going to make me recommend some things. There are things I actually can't recommend. I'll get in trouble. I'm not a medical practitioner, but I am a professional in a healing industry. So to protect myself, there's certain things I can't say. Isn't that a bunch of garbage? There's a lot of garbage that showed up for me in the last ever how long. I don't even remember when this all started. I talked to Sarah yesterday and she thinks it started on Sunday. But I'd been feeling odd for about a week. And these are the I'm going to tell you the synchronicities of events, but I first want to tell you the oddness. And I hope I can track this so well that I activate in you the same capacity for perception, the same ability to pay attention. That I feel very fortunate that I did pay attention. Very fortunate. And nobody around me is sick and there's no pandemic over here. Except I did. And my life matters to me a lot. And being alive matters to me hugely. And because I've had a couple of scrapes with death, 4 or 5, I'm much more reverent about it than people who haven't, usually for people that haven't had those scrapes. Life becomes precious when you think you may not have it. So I think this is the first thing up, so it's the first thing I'll say. So I began to notice some odd things. Like it wasn't really, when you read what you pay attention for, which I'll add that as the what's what's the word I want to say, the crescendo at the end of this part. which may not be that big a crescendo for you, but it was a shocking and profound crescendo for me. As I began to notice I was raspy and I felt more dried out than usual and that I had a cough, but that was it. And then people close to me will remember these two things. One thing is I began to notice that I was disoriented in ways I didn't remember, and even a friend of mine said, "Well, I do that all the time," but I don't do that all the time. And I noticed somewhere in the last 4 days, I said to my friends, laughing, joking, that I felt senile, that I had found my dog's hamburger in my clothes drawer the next morning, which I just don't do that. And then on another occasion, I was sure I'd carried the teapot in from outside, but I'd carried a bowl. And I noticed that, but I didn't think much about it. And then I had this raspy dryness, and that's really in hindsight because I didn't really realize how dry I felt until I went through the series of things I went through the last few days. And I had a runny nose, and but I read the symptoms, and the symptoms were a fever, and I felt oddly chilled. Oh, I felt mostly off, oddly chilled. Like I said to someone, I noticed that the cold and the hot are affecting me, like when you have pre-flu or something. But I didn't think much about it. And I'm trying to think of the other one that was going on. But it got my attention. The one thing that I have done since the virus started, which I'm actually not allowed to tell you, the product, of course, was that I have stayed on a viral bacterial nose spray. Never have stopped it. Didn't take it as much as I did while we were all sheltered in place. And I've stayed on colloidal silver. And I've stayed on um, building my immunity system. And I thought about this today. I apologize if I go all over the place. I thought about this today because I've got a couple of punchlines coming. At least they are for me. I thought about how we don't think anymore about taking Tylenol, or it used to be aspirin, for a headache or to get a fever down. The kids were dying of fevers before aspirin. We don't think anything about taking vitamins to build our immunity. We think nothing of it because we don't remember when kids were dying of fever. I do. We don't remember when compromised immunity systems had people die that didn't need to die. Hell, I probably shouldn't have said that. I watched my father die because because of his crippled body that didn't need to be crippled. And I had long begun alternative activities that had me not follow my father's path. So I just want to suggest we may be in one of those moments. You can take it or leave it. I don't believe in crapshoots at all. Something gets the attention of a whole world, it gets my attention. It definitely does. So I just began upping my dosage, the amount of times I took the two. And I just slowed down everything. And then a series of synchronistic things happened, which I think was what loves me and the greater regions of creation, making sure I was taken care of. And the first thing that happened was that I had a conversation with, I have a torn Achilles tendon, not a bad tear, but bad enough we have to fix it. And so I went to an osteopath who majors in torn tendons. And we got on the conversation about the virus. And he started to describe how it works. But he said something that stayed in my head. Now, listen, I am not a medical professional. And maybe I don't even have the right to have this conversation. I don't know. But years ago in Washington, D.C., I knew that boys and girls were dying in hospitals because no one would touch them. Because they had AIDS. So I ran down my most advanced medical practitioners at that time and quizzed them to death and found out I wasn't going to die. And I went into the hospital and I held them till they died. Because enough already. Just enough already. So I listened very intently to what he said. And the thing that caught my ear was he said, by the time people are sick enough to go to the hospital, the odds of recovery are greatly reduced. And like a flash of lightning, I realized that, and I looked it up, by the way, I realized that the only symptoms we're being told are the ones to go to the hospital, not how to catch it before it gets too bad. And I just had this really small progression of symptoms going on. I was still walking around, I was still talking. There was nothing that I would have normally thought would be something to get my attention. So I called my doctor, and and and, and when I called my doctor, who works for a big hospital corporation, also I thought was my friend, and I texted her because right before then, and I can't find it, which is really upsetting to me. Right before then, I had found, I think I was uh, registering for getting a test, and I think there was a personal assessment. It was a really, really good one. And in that personal assessment, my second synchronicity, suddenly the things that I had been just sort of putting off started to make sense. And they said if I had 3 or 4, let's say, I'm not sure anymore, let's say 3 or 4 of 7 symptoms, but anyway, I had the dosage, I had the amount, then I should go to an emergency room or call my health professional. I knew I wasn't going to go to an emergency room. And I called my health professional and they told me, and I want you to do the research on this. I actually want you to call and get the facts. Get the facts in your area. Because I have mine. And I promise what I'm about to tell you is the truth. My health professional, when I said I had symptoms, my health professional, the operator told me that a care professional would call me back within 48 hours. Within 48 hours. My friend, who I had texted, never responded at all in any manner. Her nurse called me yesterday, and the first words out of her mouth, "We are not treating people for COVID. You need to go to the emergency room." And I hung up on her. In shock, but educated. However, I have had an amazing woman taking care of my body and a few others for a year or so now, all about building my immunity system. So I called her right away, and she gave me a protocol, which I'm not allowed to give you because I'm not a health professional. And I've never taken so many pills in my life all at once, 3 times a day, some 4. But the minute she told me, I was still feeling all right, but I could tell, I can't explain it. I could feel the threat in my immunity system. I felt threatened inside my body. I felt at risk. And frankly, I didn't care if I was paranoid or not. I wasn't going to take a chance. So my beloved health food story here carried almost all of it, and I had some of it. And I was already taking the protocol for building my immunity system. I know I'm shaking because my dog is breathing right up against my leg, so I'll just have to deal. And so I don't even remember when it was, to tell you the truth. It was either 48 hours ago or more. I don't remember because all of a sudden I had the fastest, I got taken out of time. I got taken out of time. And now it doesn't seem like anything, but while I was in it, it was really scary. But I also know that the medical world is not the only answer because my healthcare practitioner, my other one, is a medical doctor. But she also pays attention to longevity, which means she pays attention to what has us live, which I deeply appreciate, frankly, more than ever. And she told me I had a good chance because I'd already been staying on the protocols already to protect my immunity system. So I could feel it coming. Oh, I'd had a sore throat. That was the other indicator, but it wasn't like a normal sore throat. The cough wasn't like a normal cough. The chill wasn't like a normal chill. And I get a very bad flu, or have, almost every year. That puts me out 3 or 4 weeks at a time. Used to take 3 or 4 months. But I never felt like I was going to die. Just I was feverish and bronchial. And so I have a really good relationship with lung stuff. And the only thing was my lungs were getting so dry. I could feel it. And my chest was constricting. But none of it was like terrifying, just unnerving. Except I could tell it was accelerating. And I knew that I'd seen enough news about by the time it's bad enough, they'll accept you at the emergency ward. About the time they accept you, how many people die 3 hours later? And you know what? That wasn't going to be me. So I got faithful really, really fast, ever how long ago this started. I know yesterday I came out of it, but I don't remember how many days before then. It was 1 or 2 even. It was fast. But as the symptoms grew, I had my pills by my side. I had my water by my side. She also included, as long as I could get up, stay up, breathe fresh air. I can walk out my back door and take a long walk. Stay in the sun. The sun is a natural antibiotic. Breathe, 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 breathe. I immediately texted my friends and WhatsApp my friends and Dom and her and asked myself and 2 others I was worried about to be put in their healing circle. I wrote my Shifu. She sent me a video clip of moves that keep the lungs open, keeps the breathing going, keeps the chest from being constricting, and how to move the energy out of the body. The other synchronistic thing that I wish wasn't part of the synchronicity is the day before I had my appointment about my ankle. The day I had my appointment about my ankle, I had had a massage, and this unbelievable explosion of cough in my entire lungs came out. And luckily, I buried my face in the massage table. And then afterwards, I closed my mouth, but there was like odd explosions of cough that I never had happen before. And my massage therapist said to me, you expelled a lot of negative energy, negative ions, a lot of debris. And I really think this combination of care is why I'm talking to you. I really do. And I may not be telling the truth, but it is weird that I am a 57-year practicing psychic and that I can't read myself. That does seem pretty odd to me, frankly. And that I'm a cellular empath who started as a medical intuitive. It would seem pretty odd that I might not know what I'm talking about. It would just seem odd. So over the space of 24, 48 hours, my chest got constricted, my glands swelled, the coughing became hard coughing like it did well, not like anything I ever knew. I can ever not describe it. It isn't like we've experienced before, which I think is good news because I think we can tell when it's not normal. I think we can tell when the cough isn't like it normally is and the sore throat isn't like it is and the fatigue feels strange. Oh, that was the other one. I was just suddenly blacking out last week. Like I'd go, 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 and then it was like my lungs didn't have enough oxygen, and down I'd go for 3 hours of sleep. Very different than needing to take a nap. Just blackouts practically. So I dug in and I just kept going. And my doctor had told me that all I was to pay attention to was the symptoms passing. That was it. And if they didn't pass, to keep her informed, and and I set up what would be next with the other doctor, because there is a next if you get worse, and all non-hospitalized. And so I was all set. Both doctors were on call for me, waiting right there if I needed them, and taking it very seriously. And then this sort of miraculous thing occurred. Besides the fact I don't have as many symptoms now, and I'm pretty sure I'm the high side of it. But I just became deeply, intimately related to my body, because it was my body I needed to take care of, not my ideas about my body, not my guessing about what was going on. I just needed to give my body a really good chance. And when I'd had terminal cancer before, obviously I didn't die of it. That's what they told me. These Japanese samurai doctors in Guelph, Ontario. They said the body the body is your key to your life. You've got to listen to your body, not your opinion. And I've never listened to my body at the level I did the last period of time. Never. Never. I can't even explain what it was like. I just wanted to give it the best chance. And I had the supplements, I had the water, I had the sun, I had everything I needed to go for it. And I just paid attention to my body. And it was amazing. It kept me calm because I knew my body needed to be calm. But something else happened, which is the more metaphysical aspect of this. Something else happened because I began to think about this strange virus and how many of us have said that how grateful we were for the time out. And as I got deeper into my own psyche and my own body, I have been searching, and this will be not new to anybody, but I have been searching for where the spirit and the flesh meet. And in my metaphysical search, while I was busy taking pills and doing my exercises and sleeping, and um, I found what gives the body life. And it's not going to sound very much when I say it, but it's our immunity system. I could hear it. It wasn't fighting anything. It was meeting the virus on its terms. It was having a conversation, like the mitochondria do. It was having a conversation. The same way I do when I'm praying. When I'm praying for someone to be whole or well or healed or happy on behalf of all life. And there was just a negotiation going on in my body. And the more conversation I gave the immunity system, the more the virus listened. It's the best way I can talk it. And really listened. And I thought of the oddest things. Because you got to realize I'm odd. I'm just fighting to have my lungs not stop breathing, and my throat not to close up. And my fever wasn't very high. It was around 99. But I was sweating and chilling. And like I thought about, wow, maybe the immunity system's like the angel of death that passed over the Hebrew children because they put blood on the doors. Maybe there's a marker. Maybe there's an evolutionary pattern going on here. Maybe my system is trying to evolve, and it can't evolve if it's weak, if its immunity is weak. And then I kept having this dream that wasn't like a dream in my twilight state, and I kept dreaming about the caterpillar and about how its system attacks itself. And I kept thinking about how the problem with this virus is the immunity system actually, it attacks the whole body, not just the lungs, but the whole body. And other things I've been complaining about, my intestines being sore, they're not sore anymore. And I realized that just kept going back into that feeling of when the caterpillar feels itself become mush, because it has to become mush. It has to have a strong enough immunity system to transmute its matter into its next form. And that was my dreaming. Take it any way you want to. And then I kept dreaming about fire, but it wasn't like I was dreaming about them. It was like I was it. I was that goop, and I was that fire. And I just kept letting my body be the source of the conversation, not my interpretation, not my mind. But these thoughts did come to me. These thoughts did come to me. And these meanderings came to me. Because sometimes our greatest wisdom comes in our meanderings, frankly. Sometimes it does. So then yesterday, still monitoring everything, still not knowing when I was going to go down, not talking to anybody, because if I tried to talk to somebody, I didn't have enough breath. I didn't even know if I could do this morning, except I was bent and determined to. Because my chest yesterday was getting sore talking to people, and that's my dog leaving. And and I feel like I was running out of oxygen. So far, so good. And then yesterday I went to sleep for 6 hours, and I woke up and I felt normal again. Not back, but I felt like something had stabilized. And that I was still going to be careful for 5 more days, still treat myself to the same amount of supplements, same amount of practice, like nothing's different for 5 more days. So that I have a couple more symptoms to go away, and I have 5 days. So then I decided to look some things up. I tried to go back and find the assessment because it was really, really good. And it was gentler because if you go look up personal assessment, it tells you you have to be in an extreme state only to go to the emergency room. There's not one personal assessment out there that says if you have these symptoms, this is the way you should treat your immunity system so that you don't have to have it go any further. There's nothing out there. Well, there is. There's alternative cures. But do we know if they work? Do you know the person that gave them to you? I do. Because I made sure I found somebody that was taking care of life, not a doctor I couldn't get my hands on, or a medical system that was only going to treat me when I was at death's door. So this assessment that I hope is on the testing site for Nevada County, because I couldn't go through it again. I'd already taken the assessment. So it probably is on there. But it talked about things like disorientation. I would have never thought that. It talked about sore muscles, but also sore abdomen. It talked about fatigue and shortness of breath, no matter how much or how little. And it helped me paint a picture and watch myself write. The other thing that I wanted to make sure I shared today is it doesn't feel like a regular flu. It's different. And it feels different. Only the runny nose, which a lot of us think are allergies, feels about the same. But I was amazed how dry I felt inside. That was the part that startled me the most. And then I decided if I got to Friday, I was going to have this conversation. Because there was a time we didn't know about aspirins. And it is not my professional opinion, it is my human opinion that we should all find the protocol. Find one that works. Find a health practitioner you trust. Don't take anything for granted. And trust yourself. And have the protocol handy. And have an ongoing protocol that builds your immunity system more strongly than you would under other circumstances. If not for yourself, then maybe if enough of us who are not in those hospital beds, maybe if enough of us give honor to our immunity system, give it a good day, build it for ourselves. Given that this is happening all over the world, is it not possible we're in a collective consciousness? And that together paying attention honors the whole? And I when I was 11 years old, I'd had a rather rough life, a very dark life with my mother. And I remember standing outside the church that I attended. I was talking to God. And I had this odd thought that if I could beat it, if I could beat the trauma I was raised inside of, then the whole world could beat it. I didn't know anything about unified fields. I didn't know anything about the one soul human at that time. I didn't know about field phenomenon. I didn't know about the power of the collective. But I thought about all those activations I do, and I only do them in groups, unless the individual, there are a couple of individuals, but mostly groups, because it builds the strength of the whole. It builds a unified field of all creation, and it operates on behalf of all life, which will include you and will include me. And I'm just pausing a minute to see if there's anything else I want to say. It's funny how in the conversation now, all night I kept thinking, the worst thing I hate listening to is people's listening. When I'm in a reading or when I'm in an engagement with someone, I'm very careful about their listening because if you say something in a particular way, they just plain won't hear you. And I thought I had all this dialogue going on in my head all night about just how I hear people talk about the virus. Well, I'm not exposed or I'm healthy. I'm healthy. Or all those people gathering together because they're in the arms of the Lord. And in the arms of the Lord, nothing can happen to them. But we didn't do that with aspirin when children were running fevers and dying of it because they didn't know aspirin would bring the fever down. That made sense. It made sense. I just think I'm making sense. Number one sense. Doesn't hurt to build your immunity system. You have vitamins at hand. Why don't you have extreme supplements to boost your immunity system rapidly in a short period of time? That's what I did. Why not? Why don't you send alkaline water or whatever your health practitioner recommends? Why don't you get a health practitioner? One that's paying attention, that you might just need every now and then. Why not? If you want to read everything that's out there about what you should do, I got to tell you, when it comes upon you, you better trust the protocol you're taking. So it seems to me, you got to find somebody you can trust. I found out who stood for my life and who didn't. That's a big deal. Do you know who stands for your life? Because you should find them. I'm one of them, by the way, for sure. There's a bunch of us, actually. Human to human, everybody. Human to human. You got to find out enough that if the symptoms start up, you got to know how to stop them. You got to have a protocol. This is not a crapshoot if it hits you. This progresses rapidly in a very, very short period of time. You need to have on hand what you need to have on hand, or not. I'm totally open for people taking the gamble. Your choice. It's just, I bet you're going to have less choice today than you did before I started this conversation. You're going to be more confronted by your choice or not choice than you would have before I started this conversation. Because only if you have extreme symptoms in my area are you taken to the emergency room. There's lots to do before the symptoms get extreme. Do you have your prayer circle? Have you physical movement like Qigong? Do you know how to keep the lungs flexible and move the qi? Are you ready? Just in case. Don't you keep supplements Don't you keep Tylenol? Why on earth wouldn't you make sure you had sudden immune boosters just in case? So I think my shock was that we're on our own until our conditions are extreme. I think that was my big shock. I think my second shock is a lot what people recommended was not what my health practitioner recommended. But that other stuff may work too. Find out who's at it and find out who it's worked for. But I understand now why so much is going around, why we're trying to find answers for ourselves. Because I'm not so sure the medical profession has given it to us. I want to read you something. It's going to take me a minute to find it because I put my stuff down because my dog was on my leg and I didn't want you to see my whole office. So just a second. Hold on. Last night when I was thinking about this call today, I ran into something that an NBC News article says some COVID-19 patients aren't getting better. Major medical centers are trying to figure out how to help. What we need is more research to explain where the symptoms are coming from, one expert said. Major medical centers nationwide, are trying to understand why some COVID-19 patients continue to have symptoms weeks, even months after having been diagnosed with the coronavirus. Amy Watson, 47, is one of those patients. She's had a fever, she said, and symptoms for 100 days. I am highly lacking symptoms right now. But there's a growing movement among healthcare providers to not only listen, but to also figure out ways to help such patients. So I wrote my healthcare providers in detail what I went through the last 48 to 24 to ever out, whatever that's after. And then this is a quote by David Petrino. You can look him up. He's a physical therapist and assistant professor at the Mount Sinai Health System in New York City. And his quote is, "Physicians should not be discounting the experience of individuals, especially in the case of a disease that we know next to nothing about." I rest my case. I rest my case. And I promise if I find a way, because I have a protocol that worked for me, if I find a way that I can do this without jeopardy to myself. But in a way, I'd like you to do your own research. I'd like for us to get our head out of the sand about this. If you listen to European countries, they are including it as a lifestyle now. I have one more thing I want to say, but I actually do not know how to say it. It's just this thing about God. I was raised in evangelical, and by the way, there's a part of me that's completely evangelical, so don't think I'm against evangelicals. I'm just against any religion that teaches hate or separates people from each other and turns them against each other. I don't care what your religion is. But we had faith healing when I was growing up because the power of their belief and that there was a higher power there that protected them and healed them. And that 11-year-old year I had one leg an inch and a half shorter than the other. The one that has the torn tendon, torn Achilles tendon. And my mom was at her art teachers in the boonies of Tennessee. And she always used to leave me at the hillbilly's house where they spun thread on the yarn, they churned butter, they did all that stuff. Milk cows, I got to do that. But one day when my mom was gone, we all walked to a tent, a revival tent. And this little hobbling girl in a semi brace, her hand on this holding onto this lady, walked into that revival tent. And one of the preachers was a woman, and nobody said anything to me except that I was deeply moved by the faith in that tent. And she walked me up to the front and helped me up on the stage, or sort of a stage, one step, I think. And I'll never forget it because the lady put her hand on my forehead and screamed, "The Lord is with you. Heal her, God, heal her." And I blacked out. And when I came to, they helped me out and I went home. By the time I was 12 years old, I don't remember the amount of time, I wasn't in a cast anymore. I rode a bike without training wheels for the first time. And when I was 21, I rode the bike 21 miles on purpose between the Twin Cities. This year, in the work I'm doing, it's about trying to fix this horrible mess that leaves us not realizing there are powers and forces of creation that operate on our behalf. And I promise you, they're with us now more than ever. I just promise that. And one of them is the primordial mother. And we could say the cosmic father, but I have to use the terms that I relate to. But that virus, I think, is an evolutionary moment. I think we're the caterpillars. And I think we really should get excited and build our immunity systems. And really be on, not for having the virus, but for morphing into the next greater whole biologically. I just think we should be on for it. Now, I have an opinion because since 2011, I've been watching the body fight to regenerate itself, fight to move into longevity, fight to move into a different system of energy and matter. I just think we ought to be on for it. And I think it's okay to think the power of the Lord is upon you. Or what moves me to tears right now is I met the primordial mother in my body. I met her in my body. I did what she said, what she told me to do. I built my immunity system. And I can feel myself transforming in the face of this. I can never prove this to anyone, ever, but I am not the same. And it isn't because I had a risk of death. It's because something happened where my spirit and flesh meet that has changed me for the good forever. And it's the first time in my life, with all the medical problems I've had, that I actually feel an internal transformation inside my own body. And we'll have to look at that later because we don't, just like when I do consults and I start to recognize something, I start to see a trend or a thread. It takes a while for us to figure out what it is. But I believe that Paradise is upon us. And there's more to this thing we call a virus than a normal virus. And that I call her she's going to alter the course of humanity, whether humanity wants to or not. So even letting her know you're taking care of yourself so she doesn't have to waste her time on you. I think I'm probably someone that needed to deliver this message, so here I am. I'm good at that, even when I don't want to, like today. Someone said about me once, there's more under heaven and earth than you can ever understand. But she's no guy in a diner. She knows of what she speaks. That was Werner Erhard, who founded EST many, many years ago. Whatever you get out of this, I wish you well. We never know why things come upon us, but we can use them on behalf of life, if we so choose. We can have them be part of our greater whole. We can have them contribute. And I hope in some manner, I have contributed to you today. God came and got me when I was 16 years old. I was having a very nasty conversation with God, and I told him if he wanted me, that he needed to give me a sign. Whereupon the whole bottom of my father's station wagon fell on the road, and a voice said to me, "This is true. Remember, I'm a mystic. You need you you only need touch one of my people, but you will never know which one." That's what got me on the call today. That I may just at least touch one, maybe even save one life, like the people in the last week saved mine. Namaste.